Right, welcome back to the Jack Ward Football Podcast and welcome to another League One roundup. 40 goals across 12 games this weekend, 6 red cards, should have been 7. We'll come on to that in the first game, but so much to dive into, a whole lot of action. Let me know in the comment section down below, how do you reflect on this weekend in Sky Bet League One? I'll be replying and responding to all of those as per usual. Lots of opinions, and it's going to make a good discussion, I hope. Please do leave a like and subscribe on the road to 5,000 subscribers, and we're going to try and do that by the end of the season. If we could do that, that would be simply sensational. Thank you so much for all of the recent support. It's been fantastic here on the podcast as we now do head into the business end of the campaign. Let's begin with the first game, Oxford United against Bolton Wanderers. So, in the first game, it finishes Oxford 0, Bolton Wanderers 1. The XG for the match, 1.67 to Bolton's 0.49. And if I'm being totally honest, from an Oxford perspective, that performance yesterday from the Yellows typifies exactly why we are where we are. In front of goal, once again, just horrendous. And we are in so much trouble. We're in so much trouble. An XG of 1.67, but toothless in front of goal. When we get into that final third, we have just got nothing. That is the bottom line. And you can see by looking at the graph in front of you and by looking at that XG. If you looked at that graph and you looked at the XG and that scoreline wasn't in front of you, you'd say Oxford should get at least a point from that match. That graph in front of you there is very similar to a game we're going to come on to later on in the episode where a side won a game 6-0. Especially that second half performance, and we lose the game at home 1-0. And that says everything. Like I said at the beginning, in the introduction to this game, that typifies exactly why Oxford are currently the final team, not in that bottom 4, on the same amount of points as the last team in that relegation zone. We're in an enormous amount of problems. And we battered up Bolton in the second half. You can see by looking at the graph, Bolton hardly had a sniff. I think we were very unlucky. But I then use that word very carefully because is a side unlucky when you're that rubbish? And, we're going to try and be as analytical as we possibly can. And we always are during these roundups. But we are hopeless. We are toothless and useless in front of goal. We cannot do anything in the final third. We look confused. We look short of ideas. And I think Liam Manning has definitely shored us up defensively. And yesterday's general performance wasn't bad. If you get a point or you win this game, you go, that's a fantastic performance where we dominated and we took our chances. We dominated the game, but we can't take our chances. If that is the second game of the season, you can sort of deal with it. But when we are not scoring goals, haven't won a game since mid-January, that performance and that final third play is not acceptable and will see you get relegated. That's the truth of the matter. Bolton weren't brilliant, and like I said in the second half, I think we actually took the game to Bolton in a way that not many sides will. I think in recent weeks they have been slightly lacklustre, and yesterday wasn't a brilliant performance from Bolton, but at this point in the season, they're not going to be concerned by it. They took their chance in the first half, and they were never really fearing they were going to concede in the second half. And I'll be interested to see what Bolton fans have got to say in the comment section down below, but I'm pretty certain in saying I don't think many Bolton fans will be worried, or were worried about conceding a goal in that second 45 especially. They took their chance when it came in the first half, but in the second half, we sort of tampered around the edge of our box. We'll come on to the statistics right now, and we'll come back to the shot map because that is just another painful visual showing from Oxford for sure. Bolton registered only 1 shot in the second half. We'll come to the second half stats now. 1 shot in the second half. It wasn't on target. I've got the XG, and the second half XG for Bolton, 0.12. Bolton had a second half XG of 0.12. That is probably one of the smallest XGs any side will get this season. To be honest with you, probably not the literal smallest that we've seen across the campaign. You probably can find lower, but 0.12 second half XG, you might as well have not even walked or stepped foot in our penalty area. But like I said, it doesn't matter, because when your opposition isn't scoring goals and does not look like a danger whatsoever when they get into that final third, you can have an XG of 0.12, defend as well as you can, and come out and win the game 1-0. And that's what happened. That is what happened. Poor shot map on target, I think, really, when you look at the ratios in the second half, and you probably have to argue both halves, but we look at all the stats there. 2 shots on target, 7 shots on target. They're not great ratios whatsoever. And actually 24 shots to 7 from Oxford is an embarrassment of a ratio. We'll come on to the shots now and the shot map and where they were. I mean, they are scattered everywhere. And if you, again, look at the XG, look at the graph, and look at that shot map without knowing the scoreline, and you don't see one of those going to the back of the net, you are probably thinking this side is just, they might as well not bother. We could still be shooting, I think, next week, and we wouldn't score a goal. I think right now, the confidence is so low, we could be shooting between now and May, at the end of the season, and still not score a goal. And that's how it feels. And when people sort of say that and you go, it's a bit reactionary, we have scored goals. One was a penalty in the last sort of 3 games, or certainly since Liam Manning has come in the door, and the other one was a goal against Morecambe, and we threw that game away anyway. We haven't won a game since Ipswich in the fog. I did a match reaction on that mid-January. That was the last time. The last time there was a match reaction dedicated to Oxford on this channel was the last time Oxford got 3 points in a game. And even that was in fog and no one could see it where everyone was. So let's just put that pretty straight. I've got to touch on the referee. I hate touching on referee performances because I don't think it matters too much, but people would have seen it. Referee decisions in Sky Bet League One are just horrendous. I mean, they are bad anyway. Across the board, sides almost are evenly matched by the end of the season when you look at bad decisions to good decisions, because there are so many. You probably actually end up about right. Some would say, Sheffield Wednesday fans in particular, will probably say this is humble pie and karma, if you like, from that horrendous decision that the referee made at home to Sheffield Wednesday a couple of weeks ago. But this was really bad again, and I won't say it's worse, but either way, we're looking at it in this context of the match. The referee to not give a red card to James Trafford, who had a good game, really. You'd like to think he did make a couple of good saves. Actually, I say that, not many. I mean, he had to save them. They weren't fantastic saves and got a clean sheet, so you'd say it's a good goalkeeping performance all round generally, and the defenders are included in that. But how he was not dismissed early on in the 38th minute in the game. Look, would we have got anything from the game with 10 men? Maybe. I don't know. I don't think so, purely because of what I saw from the players. We had to break down Bolton, and maybe with one less player that could have been made easier. But ultimately, the fact that he was not sent off is just horrendous. It's foul play. It is the last man. It is a goal-scoring opportunity. It's Oxford, so is it a goal-scoring opportunity? That's one to be argued with, but it still is a red card. It is an RKO. It is a wrestle move, goalkeeping incident. And for that reason, he has to be sent off. He's not, and he stays on. Like I said, he deals with what he has to deal with as a goalkeeper and saves the shots that were not clearing the stands a lot of the time from Oxford. Finally, let's have a little look at the league table. Now, that's still winless since, I think, 15 games, the middle of January. Of course, Liam Manning yet to win a game. It was 4 draws coming into this one. It's now a defeat at home to Bolton Wanderers, and that league table is giving me a whole lot of anxiety, if I'm being totally honest with you. I'm not comfortable when looking at that. Cambridge are on a resurgence as of late. Even Morecambe are looking pretty good, but Cambridge are the side to watch out for. I mean, 3 wins from their last 4, 40 points, same amount of points as Oxford, who are in 20th position. And the form table is a big indicator of where a side will finish come the end of the campaign. At this point in the season, for sure, that is not comfortable, and it's going to be very, very tight. Cambridge have got Wycombe next on Tuesday. We're at home to Pompey, so massive games of football. Pompey and Wycombe, you'd say, are 2 sides still fighting for the top 6 places. They have fallen off as of late, but still in that contention. And both Cambridge and Oxford have to play them and host, I believe, both of them on Tuesday night. So it's going to be very, very interesting, but I'm looking at this from an Oxford point of view. I am so nervous. It's unimaginable. When looking at the top 6, Bolton are in 5th with a fantastic smash and grab, you'd say, win for them. But I use that word very carefully because I don't think we ever threaten them too much. 71 points in that top 6, like I said, a 2-point cushion in those playoff places for Ian Everett's side. And for them yesterday, I think they're just going to take that and run home. But either way, it is Bolton Wanderers to come away with the victory. Oxford United 0, Bolton Wanderers 1 is the final score. So, in the next one, Forest Green Rovers 1, Barnsley 5. The XG for the match, 0.48 to Barnsley's 2.34. A delightful Barnsley display that now does see Forest Green Rovers relegated into Sky Bet League 2. You'd also have to say as well, a performance and game that does sum up Forest Green's season. Outclassed and outplayed in most departments. Let's have a little look at the stats first and foremost, because it felt as if every time Barnsley came forward, they scored a goal. One of those games, 8 shots on target for Barnsley across the 90 minutes, 5 goals. Talk about being clinical. That is just it to another degree. Coming back up to the graph as well, it does show the attacking momentum of the game. Just totally clinical. Every time they came forward, they scored a goal. They missed a penalty in the match as well. It should have been 6, but you look at the spikes. I mean, there are quite a few of them, but the big spikes in the match, they scored a goal. When they came forward, the chance creation and the XG of 2.34, yes, it is high, but even still, 8 shots on target. If they don't win the game, which by looking at the scoreline is hard to imagine, you probably would say you should have more shots and test the goalkeeper on more occasions. But when you score 5 from 8 shots on target, when hitting the goalkeeper, or not so much hitting the goalkeeper and going into the back of the net, you would say that is absolutely fantastic. And I am saying that is a wonderful display. Forest Green actually had more of the ball across the match. You can see the possession stats, 59% possession to 41. But in this case, it's about what you do, or in Forest Green Rovers' case, what you don't do with the ball. And that is a massive example of where it went wrong. Only 9 shots from 59 possession, 2 shots on target, 59% possession. It's just not very good. And to concede 5 goals defensively, leaky is one word, shambolic is another. For Barnsley, it's absolutely fantastic and a huge confidence boost. Morale is through the roof right now. To score that many goals in a game, yes, it's bottom of the league, and a side that has been relegated on the 16th or in the 15th of April. Recording this the day later, even so, it is a fantastic achievement to score 5 goals in a professional football match away from home. Let's have a little look at some key players, then we like highlighting these key players and who stood out in the different games. Adam Phillips will deserve the credit for Barnsley, 2 goals, and that's why he will be in the headlines. But I think Luke O'Connell definitely deserves huge credit. You'll see the heat map as well. He's really all over the area, sort of definitely dominating and picking up the ball in those deeper areas. You can see this is his penalty box here. He's picking up the ball just outside his penalty area and creating from deep, and that's what Luke O'Connell is able to do. We mentioned him in our underrated 11 video a couple of weeks ago. He's been fantastic during the season, and I'd say all of the season. He's been such a brilliant part of this Barnsley side that is ticking along nicely and currently in 4th position. 2 assists in the game as well, 3 key passes. He came off in the 63rd minute because Michael Duff knew that game was over. In fact, he made 3 subs at the 63rd minute when his side were 4-0 up. But Luke O'Connell, even though he played 63 minutes of the match and not the entirety of it, he was fantastic, and a big reason as to why they went on to win the game so convincingly. Fair play to him, but you can't really look too further than Adam Phillips, who also had a fantastic game. A game to forget for Forest Green Rovers, who were absolutely torn apart. When looking at the league table now, you can see we don't need to look at Forest Green too much. 4 defeats on the bounce, but 28 defeats from 42 games isn't very good whatsoever. 26 points. They are down and out and will be playing League 2 football next season. A great achievement to get into League 1, that must be said, but in terms of retaining that status, that won't be happening this time around. Barnsley in 4th position, as I just said there, 81 points, back-to-back wins for them. Are they still in that top 2 race? Does that win certainly put them back into that top 2 contention? I think they're in top 6 contention, don't worry about that, but top 2 contention, I think it definitely should be highlighted. I've got a video coming out very, very soon, breaking down that top 2 and automatic promotion race, and Barnsley will be getting a big mention. I think it's going to be a very, very interesting end to the season for all clubs, but especially Barnsley. Let's move on to the next game. It finishes Forest Green Rovers 1, Barnsley 5. So next up we have the Devon Derby. It finishes Exeter 0, Plymouth 1. The XG for the match, 0.45 to Plymouth's 0.29. It probably was not a Devon Derby to remember, not one for the history books, but in this case, a tight, edgy battle, not many goals, and actually the best side losing the game. But for Plymouth, they will not be concerned by that whatsoever at this stage in the season. The business end of the campaign, 3 points, a victory over your arch rivals, grinding out a game, that's all they'll be concerned about, and all they should be concerned about. When looking at the stats, it says quite a lot about what type of game this was. Neither side having a big chance during the entire game. Exeter dominated the ball but failed to create any openings or opportunities for themselves. 63% possession, both with 9 total shots and 2 on target. Not testing either goalkeeper, not much work for either goalkeeper to do. It just wasn't a very good game. A tight, battling derby, but not one like it was at the start of the season. 4-2 in the reverse fixture, nothing like that. Unfortunately for Exeter, Plymouth only need one chance, and we've been saying this quite a long time with Plymouth, especially through this season. They're so good in front of goal. When they have an opportunity, they only need one chance, and we speak about Exeter not opening many opportunities for themselves. Plymouth, they only need one from those 2 shots on target. They take it, and they go on and win the game 1-0. And I think it's pretty fair to say by looking at those stats, that is the type of game it was. Not very good. When looking at the standings, Plymouth in first, 86 points. Some good form recently. A defeat at home to Lincoln last week wasn't one to remember, but really since then, getting back into a good vein of form and making sure that doesn't derail their season is the important thing. A win over Exeter, of course, their biggest rival, is all that matters. And a big morale boost, you'd like to think, in that camp. Maybe the performance wasn't there. But even so, in this type of game with these circumstances, the result is what matters. When you look at Exeter, not actually great in terms of their recent form. 3 defeats on the bounce now after that defeat. 53 points after 42 games. Exeter will probably feel frustrated, hard done by, shortchanged, I'd say, because they did deserve more from it. But a grind, turgid, tedious game of football. It ends 1-0 to the away side. Exeter 0, Plymouth Argyle 1. Regaining top spot Plymouth. A good result against the rivals. And that is the final score. And the deep dive into not a great game of football. So, in the next one, Burton Albion 3, Sheffield Wednesday 2. The XG for the match, 0.78 to Sheffield Wednesday's 1.87. Now, only one win in their last 8 for Wednesday. They now do drop back out of the top 2. When we speak about a side outdoing their expected goals, Burton yesterday, with an XG of 0.78, scored 3 goals. And when we scroll down to the stats here, 3 shots on target. They win the game 3-2 and, of course, score 3 goals. Incredible, and says so much about their attacking and final third ability and taking those chances. They created 2 big chances from those efforts as well. Just incredible. It doesn't always work, but in this case it does. When you've got lethal finishers, it does. From only 16 shots, Sheffield Wednesday struggled to only create 3 shots on target. I know that's the same as Burton, who I've just praised for the shots on target in the goals and hitting the back of the net. But ultimately, when you concede 3 goals and don't score all 3 of your shots on target, that's where it doesn't work. Especially with 16 shots on target. Across the board, those numbers, those stats, they just seem very flat for Wednesday, really lacklustre. And at this point in the season, that is not good enough. The form is so hit and miss. They're out of the top 2, like I said right at the start. And just when you look at that, that is not a side or performance that is promotion winning, title winning whatsoever. It's so flat. That's the only way I can describe it. Just really off it. And that is a massive blow. When you look at how good they were against Accrington last week, we thought that is the boost. That's the fantastic attacking ability. Defensively, they got Accrington to a 0.78 XG, if I remember correctly. Such a low expected goals. Defensively, going forward, top dollar. But in this game, back to reality, back to the form that we saw before that game last weekend, it was just really just not there. And when we run through the game, 3-1 down at half-time, I read an article, I think it was a post-match interview that Darren Moore did. He was speaking about his frustration surrounding the lack of response that he saw from his players in the second half. And you have to agree, he's not wrong. Should he be given the criticism that he is being given? You'd have to probably say yes. I think he has, and I've never fully got it, but I think a Wednesday fan got it spot on in the comments last week when they said that I'm never going to fully understand Darren Moore and the relationship with him and Wednesday and the fans and that sort of triangle that's going on, the players being a part of that triangle. I'm not going to get it unless I'm a Wednesday fan. I totally get that. When I do these roundups, I'm looking at it from a purely neutral perspective, other than, of course, the Oxford games. But you have to sort of criticise him. He speaks about his frustration with a lack of reaction. I get the decision that he made. He didn't make any subs at half-time because he wanted the players that played in that 3-1 awful showing in the first half to do something and be the players that can get themselves out of the mess that they've put themselves into. I do get that, and for managers and for in other games and other situations and circumstances, that has worked. I'm not denying that. It is a management skill. But I would say sometimes you've got to take the matter into your own hands, and 62nd minute for the first substitution to happen, you've got to see a reaction, and you've got to do it earlier. I think you have to make subs at half-time. We know in hindsight, and hindsight is a wonderful thing. The bottom line is, though, like I said, when looking at those stats, it's just not there. It's just really, really flat. The goalkeeping switching is just confusing me. I know it's not a reason why they lost the game necessarily, but Cameron Dawson, Stockdale, do we just flip a coin before the game? Is that what happens? I think Byers is a massive miss. That midfield of Bannon, Volks and Byers is a 3 that I think was bringing it together, and a massive reason why they were winning games when they were, especially during that unbeaten run. Him not being there is a massive issue, and that is, I think, a gaping hole in that side. When we look at the league table, it's not as pretty as it was last week. 3rd in the league, out of that top 2 now, and It's, of course, ever-changing. It's so difficult to sort of see how it's going to go. It's unpredictable. Saying that, I've got a video coming out next week. I think it is next week. It should be next week. Early next week. It's Sunday. Keep forgetting the day. Breaking down the top 2 race. And, you can't call it. You can't call it. I do a little prediction in there, but it is impossible to do it. Last week when you do play that against Accrington, you expect them then to be going, yeah, they're back on it. And then you go and put that display in yesterday against Burton, and you go, Ipswich win 6-0, Plymouth get a result, and they grind out a result. It's just very, very different. In the comment section down below, a question to you, Sheffield Wednesday fans, would be, on a scale of 1 to 10, how concerned are you by this recent form, and especially that result yesterday? I'd imagine I'm seeing 8s and 9s. That's probably what I would say. Congratulations to Burton Albion, that must be said as well. Great credit to them. Goals win games, and they were great in the final third. And for that, the reason why they win the game. It finishes Burton Albion 3, Sheffield Wednesday 2. So the final game before we go around the grounds, it finishes Ipswich 6, Charlton 0. The XG for the match, 3.49 to 0.19. And I could be going way too far with this call, but this is as close to a champion's performance without being champions that you'll see. Ipswich were fantastic. Talk about a battering. Ipswich completely destroyed Charlton yesterday. It was unfair. Men versus boys is just one way of looking at it. Look at the graph in front of you. Look at the XG of 3.49. They never stopped. It was relentless for 90 minutes. They never took their foot off the gas. And I think at this point in the season, that is so special. And says so much about Kieran McKenna as a manager and the squad of players that he's got there. Because at 3-0, even at 2-0, when you're in total control, to still be scoring goals in the 5th minute of injury time says so much about the mentality and the squad that they've got there. Because you've got games coming up. You've got some massive games coming up in the business end of the campaign. With Plymouth, Sheffield Wednesday, it's such a tight top 3 race and top 2 race with 3 teams and arguably 4 in Barnsley still chasing down those positions. It's so close. It's so tight. And when a game is almost won, when is a game won? I think 6-0 is a pretty comfortable position to be in. But when you are winning games and in a position where you are 2 or 3-0 up with 10, 15 minutes to go, to bring on the type of talent that they've got there says so much about this team. I want to sort of have a little look at the average positions, because I think that says so much about the game and the game plan and how it went so wrong for Charlton. In fact, we'll start with Charlton and Dean Holden's boys here. Cramped in their own half with no attacking outlet. And the massive reason for that is because Ipswich never let them get out. They were so pinned in. They failed to deal with and get out due to the Ipswich pressure for the entire match. You can see number 8 is the furthest forward player, Bon. Ipswich, Leif Davis, who is number 3, their left back, was in a high position on average through the entire game. Leif Davis, their left back, is playing more an advanced position than any Charlton player. That says so much. A huge problem for Charlton, but a lot of this, look, Charlton were bad, very bad. Any side that loses 6-0 is bad on the day. But Ipswich deserves so much credit. I think the massive reason for this is just how good they were. And that is the bottom line. Look at the space they created. Charlton cramped, so close to each other, so deep. Ipswich spread out. See, talk about a double pivot. Number 5, Morsey. Number 25, Leongo. They are the 2 central midfielders in this Ipswich side. They are playing so tight to each other, almost on top of each other. They are fantastic, but made it look so easy. They didn't need to drift out wide. They didn't need to play in those wide areas because they know they had Leif Davis, who was their left back, playing as a winger. Talk about key players. Connor Chaplin scored a hat-trick on the day, and that'll be what writes the headlines. But look at his heat map when it loads in. The heat map here. He is just taking over the attacking third. Taking over, in fact, the whole half of Charlton's. Completely and utterly all over Charlton's half. They just, he's drifting more to that right-hand side, but just a fantastic display. 3 goals, 2 key passes as well. Not just a goal scorer. He does create opportunities. He does just get onto everything. So Clinical is a fantastic player, phenomenon at this level. He's had a fantastic individual season, and yesterday just did cap that off with a hat-trick, his first hat-trick for the football club. It was just incredible. And like I said, talk about a takeover in the key areas. Chaplin did that fantastically well. Let's have a little look at the shot map, because that is just a beautiful thing to look at from an Ipswich point of view. Look at it. You can't even see the box. It was just full of opportunity, chance, and actually only 7 shots on target. So To score 6 goals from 7 shots on target is, of course, a huge achievement. And when you do score 6 goals from 7, you can look in a much better position and walk away going, that was absolutely fantastic. And how good were they when it comes to having that clinical edge? But just destroyed them in the penalty area and outside the penalty area. Depressing from a Charlton perspective when looking at theirs. I mean, look at that. I can't say much because I'm an Oxford fan and we can't hit a barn door and we can't hit the goal if it was the entire stand behind the goal. But I think that is painting a pretty disturbing picture, but says so much about the way that Ipswich just attacked. They didn't need to defend. Their best form of defence was attack. It's a cliche in football, but Kieran McKenna, it's just the truth. It's exactly what is happening right now. 5 big chances from 7 shots on target is a side playing with complete and utter confidence. And when you look at the league table now, second in the league, 85 points after 41 games, capitalising on that Sheffield Wednesday defeat. It's very tight, it's very close. Of course, they still do have a game in hand on Darren Moore's side, but they're in the top 2. And it's going to make a blockbuster end to the season. A just all-round exceptional display from Ipswich yesterday. It finishes Ipswich 6, Charlton 0. Let's finish off this roundup by going around the grounds because there is so much to also dive into. If you noticed, a 5-game roundup this weekend because I couldn't just cram them all into 4. It was so much drama, and this game could have easily got in there. Bristol Rovers 1, Derby County 1. A disappointing Derby display and performance, you'd say. Bristol Rovers on top for large parts of the 90 minutes and deserved to get something from the game. They did 1-1, the final score. Shrewsbury 1, Pompey 1. Pompey knocking on the door in the last 20-30 minutes and actually conceding when they were not really in control of the match. They did score when they knocked on the door in those last sort of 20-30 minutes of the match. 1-1 is the final score on that game. Let's go to Morecambe 1, Wickham 0. Not a very good one for any relegation sides. Not looking at anyone in particular. Morecambe 1, Wickham 0. That Wickham performance, and you'd say as well the way that Wickham are playing right now, and their form is just not good enough. Bloomfield having a struggling time in his first weeks as manager. Lincoln 3, Port Vale 2. A fantastic game of football. 2 red cards for Port Vale and a red card for Lincoln as well. Fantastic game. Jake texted me after it and he said, I don't even know where to start when describing that match. And I think I can now, by looking at that, see exactly why. Another one that if there wasn't such drama elsewhere, could easily have been a selected game. MK Dons 2, Charlton 2 is the final score in that one. MK Dons and Cheltenham. MK Dons and Cheltenham. A fantastic match there. Fleetwood 5. No, Accrington 2, Fleetwood 5, but 5-2 for Fleetwood. A fantastic showing. Another great game. 7 goals in that one. 42 goals in total. I think I said that right at the start. A great goal scoring display from every League One side, other than the ones that didn't score any goals, funnily enough. 2 late goals for Fleetwood does seal off a 5-2 win for them. Cambridge 2, Peterborough United 0 in that derby. Again, for relegation sides, Cambridge beating Peterborough. It's a fantastically bad scoreline and result, but for Cambridge it is fantastic. 2-0. And a result over their rivals there as well. And the rest of the games we have touched on the league table is just above me here. The bottom 4 now. Cambridge in 21st, but only goal difference is the reason why they're not out of it. Morecambe and Accrington and Forest Green Rovers, of course, now relegated, make up the bottom 3. Not all of those relegated, by the way. Forest Green are relegated in 24th. And that top 6 now, Peterborough in 6th, Bolton in 5th, Barnsley in 4th, Sheffield Wednesday in 3rd, Ipswich in 2nd, and Plymouth regaining top spot, top of the table. A full programme, of course, on Tuesday night as well, so we'll be rounding up on Wednesday. Hopefully you did enjoy it, and I will see you all very, very soon. Take care.